thing, what the method tells us is once you've got the mood, then, and you've got the maestry complete, you've got the allegory complete, then what you do is you look around in your do sort of a second consultation. You match up the attunement image with the discourse of your knowledge base. And you say, well, how can I move? Because the whole idea is how to move on. Inference really is what we're talking about, is a kind of inference procedure. Well, the inference procedure of images is not inductive, deductive, or abductive even. It's conductive, meaning it follows a kind of aesthetic dream work pattern where we follow the signifier. So what we did was we looked for some idea in our knowledge base of post-structuralism that coordinated with the impoundment of the Haitian boat, which had been shown to be the attunement of the zone. And of course, what we found was a eureka experience in finding it was Derrida's notion of aporia, or aporia, which is kind of an absolute impasse. Actually, the term goes back to Greek philosophy, ancient philosophy. Just when the Greeks had a question, they considered it to be an aporia, or aporia. That is, that there was an impasse, like there was a problem, there was a contradiction. It was a knot was tied up. You had a problem. You had to then untie the knot. You had to solve the problem by reasoning in a dialectical way. So the aporia didn't have any particular special meaning there other than related to problem solving. But Derrida, Jacques Derrida, the French deconstructive philosopher, took aporia and opposed it to problem. Well, there's problem, and when you're thinking in terms of problem, you're always thinking about solving the problem. But aporia sticks with the impossibility of the solution. Aporia is for problems for which there is no solution. Impasses, such as the condition of the Miami River, which is an impasse. It's not just the Haitians are at impasse, but everything is at an impasse there. That is, the best science, the best politics, the best that the modern American civilization can do can't touch the problem of the Miami River. It just keeps going on as a problem. So that's an aporia. That's this ultimate impasse of a problem. So then we said, well, let's look at Derrida a little further to see what he suggests can be done, how to treat aporias. Because he said what you do with the aporia is then you have to think otherwise, because you can't just keep thinking in your problematic, you're consulting your normal kinds of instrumental terms where you can calculate and figure out and know what you're going to do, and there'll be progress when you're done. You have to think in another way. The impasse has a good side in that it creates an opportunity in the sense of a port, of an opening that is a break. And so this is where the name for the Miami choreography came up with. We came up with the notion of Myotra. Just to explain what Myotra means, we had Miami, and then Miami is actually a Native American word, which I forget what it means, springs or water or something, I forget. But in any case, we had been working then with Miami spelled with a Y, M-Y, Miami, sort of referring to maestry, but distinguishing between Miami with an I and Miami with a Y. Miami with a Y is a sort of Miami of Miami Vice. It's the Miami of all those news reports about drug dealers, and it was the sort of spectacle of Miami. And then Myotra is the name for the Cora. Myotra is when both Miamis get put onto the web and become a holistic image that's intelligible, that allows us to think about that site as a quantum whole, whole in every sense of the word. And so Derrida had this book called The Philosophy of, or The Politics of Friendship. And of course, in French, amitié is friendship. I mean, so the ami is the friend. And in our methodology, just like with Ficelle, when he looked at the initials of the troops that were the companies that were with Custer and said that should spell something, and it did in French. Well, Miami spells something in French, sort of, which is legitimate anyway in terms of the Haitian context, because Haitians speak Creole, which is a French Creole. So actually, my friend in French would be mon ami, but in Spanish it would be mi amigo. And we said, well, Miami is like my friend. And here is Derrida's book on the politics of friendship. That book must have something to do. That politics of friendship must be the source of the advice that we are to give in our consultation back to the city of Miami. or to the United States of America about what to do about this impasse. So we looked into that book, and what Derrida does in The Politics of Friendship is he shows that the history of politics has been thought about from the Greeks to the present in terms of the model of friend and enemy. So it was always, you took the familial, local, personal situation of what it feels like to be friends with somebody, to be enemies with somebody, and mapped it onto the collective totality, whether it was a city-state or whether it was a nation-state, and always thought in terms of friend and enemy. And Derrida's suggestion is that that thinking has to change, and he proposes another kind of politics, which is the politics of hospitality, the politics of host and guest. Now, this is extremely attractive in our context of the Teoria because we were working with tourism already. The hospitality industry is the major industry in Florida. 40 million people are the guests of Florida every year. We are hosting these people. So we thought, well, the politics of hospitality, what's that like? Well, unfortunately, the politics of hospitality is extremely challenging. As Derrida says, the method in any consulting situation is not to see how you can fix it in the most pragmatic way, but to look for what is impossible in that situation. And then you know your limits. Then you've discovered the boundaries of your own thinking. And then you look there to see, well, is it the very structure, is it the very categories of my thinking that are the source of my inability to solve this problem? Quite likely so. And the relevance of the new image category of Cora in this context is that problems are not found, they are made. Problems don't exist in nature like little nuggets or apples on a tree, but they're constructed within a particular ideology and within a particular political situation. So what all the analysts of category formation say is you can construct, if you had a different kind of category system, in other words, if you had a different metaphysics, you'd get a completely different organization of problems. You wouldn't get rid of problems, but you'd think about them completely differently. You would be dividing up the world in a completely different way if you had a different category system. So what we're suggesting is the Cora, the image category, looks at the whole situation completely differently, picks out a different nature, picks out a different dimension of the experience, and then rethinks problems from that point of view. Well, what was Derrida's suggestion? Derrida's suggestion is really a kind of post-Cold War kind of dilemma. The aporia and the politics, we could call it the Cold War international relations was structured by prisoner's dilemma. This was John von Neumann, who invented, one of the inventors of game theory, called prisoner's dilemma. Was this structure, this little game, actually originated as a parlor game, and he borrowed it for his purposes. But the way the game worked was you just assumed you had two parties, and you assumed that these parties, that the self-interest of each of these parties was completely opposed one to the other, that they were absolute enemies, in other words. And then the Cold War philosophy was worked out, strategy was worked out in terms of this game theory. And actually what the odds of this game theory of prisoner's dilemma suggested was that the strategy of the United States should be first strike. I mean, that's what the odds favored. Now, there were other considerations, so we didn't, in fact, ever practice first strike in the nuclear standoff, the nuclear aporia. But that was the way of friends and enemies. Well, what about the politics of hospitality, of host and guest? And in that terminology, what the ethics, the terminological properties of ethics is, the guest is other. It's called other, autre, or autri in Levinas's philosophy, Levinas. So the idea was we thought, well, we're going to switch from my ami, my friend, to my other, that is the guest, and we'll have a politics of my other. So that'll be my autre. It'd be mon autre, or el otro, mi otro in Spanish. So this is where our name came from Miami to my autre.